Okay, let's be real for a second.
Yeah.
Are we all kind of Elon Musked out?
I can see that.
I mean, the guy's everywhere. Rockets, cars, Twitter, even those weird tunnels.
He does get around, that's for sure.
But are we really understanding what's going on with him? That's what we're diving into today, right?
Exactly. We're going past the headlines and digging into the real story behind Elon Musk.
Genius. Villain.
Out.
Or just a billionaire with a Twitter addiction.
We're going to figure that out.
Yeah.
And to really get him, we got to go back to the beginning.
All right, so back to the beginning.
Back to South Africa, way before Silicon Valley.
Okay, so everyone always talks about, like, emerald mine money, right? But I heard it wasn't quite like that.
Right. It's more complicated than that.
So was his childhood actually rough?
Yeah, it wasn't the luxurious upbringing people imagine. His dad imported emeralds, but they weren't wealthy.
Really?
And Elon was bullied terribly. He even ended up hospitalized after one attack.
Oh, wow, that's awful. I mean, it makes you think maybe that fueled his drive.
Yeah, maybe. He definitely developed this incredible resilience.
Yeah.
Like he learned to code by himself as a kid.
No way.
Yeah, and he sold his first video game at 12 for $500.
What? 12 years old? That's crazy. So was he already thinking about, humanity and consciousness back then?
Absolutely. Even as a teen, he was asking huge questions about life, the universe, everything.
Deep stuff.
And he saw technology as the key to unlocking human potential, pushing the limits of what we can achieve. And that led him to California.
To Stanford, right?
Yeah, but he dropped out pretty quickly to start Zip2.
Zip2, right. Online maps for newspapers. Sounds pretty basic now.
Yeah, now we have Google Maps. But back then, it was groundbreaking. Think the early internet days.
Oh, right. Before everyone was online. So did it work out?
Big time. He sold Zip2 for $307 million.
$307 million.
Yeah.
From online maps. That's insane.
Yeah, he disrupted a whole industry and made a fortune. And that just fueled his ambition even more.
So what came next?
X.com. Online banking. Which, of course, became PayPal.
Oh, wow. PayPal. So that's where that all started. And then eBay bought it for, what was it, $1.5 billion?
Yeah, $1.5 billion. Musk's cut was around $180 million.
This is like real-life Monopoly, and he's winning every time.
Right. Most people would retire. But not Elon. He put that money into SpaceX and Tesla.
Now, that's where things get interesting.
For sure. SpaceX making space travel cheaper with reusable rockets, and Tesla bringing electric cars to everyone.
These weren't small ideas. It was like he was betting everything.
And that's classic Musk. He takes huge risks, dives into the technical stuff himself, questions everything, pushes his teams hard.
So he's a demanding boss.
Oh yeah, demanding is putting it mildly. I've heard he can be blunt, even rude. Some call him an asshole to work for.
Ouch. So what about Tesla? Didn't he do some unusual things?
Yeah, like open sourcing their patents and no traditional marketing.
Seriously? No marketing for Tesla? How did that work?
It was brilliant, actually. His goal was to accelerate electric car adoption for the planet and for Tesla.
So by helping everyone, he helped himself.
Exactly. Tesla became the most valuable car company in the world.
Wow, that's a whole different way of thinking. But wasn't SpaceX rough at the start?
Oh, yeah. Those first few years were brutal. 3 failed launches in a row.
That's got to be heartbreaking. All that work, all that money, and then boom.
It took 6 years and tons of pressure before their first successful launch and landing.
But that was a turning point for space travel, right?
Huge turning point.
Yeah.
Reusable rockets made everything cheaper. Suddenly, space was more accessible.
So he single-handedly restarted the space race.
Pretty much. SpaceX partners with NASA, launches satellites, even sent the first all-civilian crew to space.
It's hard to keep up with all he's done. And then there's the Boring Company and Neuralink and even AI with OpenAI.
Right, those two. Tunnels, brain-computer interfaces, and AI. It's a lot.
Wait, so he wants to solve traffic, merge our minds with machines, and he's involved with AI. It's like he doesn't sleep.
It's all connected to his vision of pushing human potential.
Yeah.
But as his power grew, things got complicated.
And that brings us to Twitter. 2022. He drops this bombshell. He's buying it for $44 billion.
Yeah, $44 billion.
And he had these big reasons for doing it.
Like what?
He wanted to make Twitter a bastion of free speech. And he was convinced there was a liberal bias in San Francisco's tech scene that Twitter was an information weapon for the left.
An information weapon. That's a big accusation.
It is. And this is where things start to get tricky. Yeah, tricky is one way to put it. Because honestly, his actions after the takeover didn't always line up with those big free speech ideals.
So what, he was just saying all that for show?
Well, let's look at the evidence. Remember all that banning and unbanning? He let some people back on, like Trump and Kathy Griffin.
Right.
But
Wow.
others, like Alex Jones, stayed banned, at least for a while. It felt less like a principled stand and more like, I don't know, playing favorite.
Yeah, it was all over the place. And what about that whole San Francisco bias thing? Was he right about that?
Well, a big study on how Twitter's algorithms work actually found that it leaned right before Musk took over. Hold on. So he was wrong. Twitter was actually boosting conservative voices.
That's what the data showed. Makes you wonder about that whole San Francisco bias narrative, right?
Yeah, kind of sounds like he was making excuses. But what about the government censorship? I thought he was all about fighting that.
Well, that's the ironic part. Under Musk, Twitter started complying with government takedown requests way more often.
Seriously, censorship increased after he took over. I thought he was supposed to be the free speech guy.
You'd think, right?
Yeah.
Before Musk, they said yes to government requests about half the time.
Okay.
After, over 80%.
Wow, that's a big jump. What kind of stuff were governments asking them to take down?
Well, there was that incident during the Turkish election in 23. The government there wanted Twitter to block some accounts.
Hmm.
A Kurdish businessman and a journalist, both critics of the president. And Twitter did it.
So they silenced people who were speaking out against the government right before an election.
And the justification was that they had to avoid being shut down completely in Turkey.
But didn't Twitter fight that kind of pressure before?
Yeah, a similar thing happened a few years earlier, and they refused to censor, even if it meant a temporary shutdown. It seems like their principles are kind of flexible when it comes to protecting their business, huh?
It's all about the bottom line, right? This
Yeah.
whole thing is starting to sound less like a free speech crusade and more like something else.
It does make you wonder, if he wasn't really in it for free speech, then what was he after?
What do you think?
Well, some say he's just addicted to chaos. He needs that drama, that constant attention, and Twitter gives him that in spades.
So he's like a drama queen, a billionaire drama queen.
Maybe. Or maybe he wants to control the conversation, shape public opinion, silence anyone who disagrees with him.
So less about open dialogue and more about pushing his own agenda.
Possibly. And there's evidence to support that. There was that report about him having engineers boost his tweets.
What? Boost his tweets? Like artificially?
Apparently, he wasn't happy that his tweets were getting less engagement than President Biden.
Wait, seriously. He changed the algorithm to make himself look more popular.
That's what the report said. And if it's true, it undermines the whole idea of a level playing field on Twitter.
Yeah, if you can just manipulate what people see, that's not free speech. That's just controlling the narrative.
Exactly. And then there's his whole approach to moderation, letting some controversial figures back while banning others. He even labeled the word cisgender a slur and threatened to ban people for using it.
That's wild. It doesn't sound very free speech to me.
Right. It's like he's making it up as he goes along.
Hmm.
And he's gone after journalists who criticize him, banned accounts that organized protests against him, even sued organizations that spoke out against Twitter.
So he's silencing anyone who disagrees with him.
It's a pattern, for sure. And it's eroding trust in Twitter, maybe even hurting online communication overall.
It's a lot of power for one person to have. But his other companies, SpaceX, Tesla, those have clear goals, right? You launch a rocket, you sell a car.
Right, you can measure success pretty clearly.
But Twitter, it's different. It's messy. It's hard to know what's working and what's not.
Exactly. It's like a giant experiment with no real way to know the results. And all this drama is pushing people away, users, advertisers, even his own supporters.
It's a far cry from the guy who inspired a generation with SpaceX and Tesla. It's almost sad, you know?
It is. Like, is this the same guy who dreamed of colonizing Mars? Is he getting lost in all the power and chaos?
It's like a Shakespearean tragedy. The hero, blinded by his own ambition, causing his own downfall.
Maybe. But it's not over yet. We don't know how this Twitter story ends. It could be a turning point, for better or worse, for the whole internet.
Man, it's kind of depressing, right? I mean, he did all these amazing things, but now it feels like he's just imploding.
Yeah, it's like a cautionary tale almost.
Yeah.
Absolute power corrupts and all that.
Yeah, even when you start out with good intentions, I guess.
And with a platform like Twitter, that power can do a lot of damage.
So, back to our original question. Visionary or supervillain? It's not an easy answer, is it?
Nope, not at all. Musk is this mix of brilliance and, well, some pretty bad choices. It makes you think about ambition, you know? How it can go wrong, even with the smartest people.
It's a little Shakespearean. The hero's downfall. because of his own ego.
Right, there's that tragic element. But we don't know the ending yet. What does Twitter become? What happens to online communication?
It's a lot to think about. So what do we do? I mean, we're not launching rockets or buying social media companies.
I think the biggest thing is to be careful. Don't just accept everything you see online. Think for yourself. Do your own research.
Yeah, question everything.
Exactly. Even brilliant people can be wrong. And just following one person blindly, that's never a good idea.
It's like we have to take responsibility for what we believe.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We have to hold people accountable, even the powerful ones, no matter how much money they have or how many followers.
This whole deep dive has really opened my eyes. Elon Musk, the guy who wanted to take us to Mars, now he's showing us how tech can actually divide us.
It's heavy stuff, but important. What happens online, it affects everything, even democracy, maybe.
Yeah, you're right. So next time I see an Elon Musk headline, I'm going to remember this conversation.
Yeah,
And I'm going to think twice.
good. Question everything. Stay informed.
Oh.
That's how we make sure the internet doesn't turn into, well, whatever Elon Musk wants it to be.
The future's not set in stone, right? We all have a part to play.
That's the point. Let's make it a future we can all be proud of.